Hi, I'm Andrea.
I'm Claudia.
And this is Judgy Crime Girls.
Hi, and welcome, everybody.
So happy to be back. This has been an awesome week. We've had some new subscribers. Just want to do a quick shout out before we get started. We have a exclusive Patreon, if you will. Every single Friday for just $3 a month, you can support the show and be a part of Judgy After Dark. Hey, we want to shout out to Jane,
Mercy,
and Dana.
Hi, Dana.
What's going on? Appreciate you. And thank you for sharing episodes, rating the show. All of it helps. Appreciate the support.
Yeah, definitely. If you cannot subscribe, you can give us a 5-star review. You can follow us on our socials and share our content.
Whatever case we have rolling this week, we'll share pictures of on our Facebook and Instagram. So be sure to follow us there as well. If you listen to us, you know that we like to kick things off with food because that's what we love.
Oink, oink.
And if you're anything like us, you know what we mean. Today we are snacking on some Chobani vanilla Greek yogurt with mixed berries and Honeycrisp apples.
They're my favorite, too. No, they're not.
They're not?
They're my second favorite.
What's your favorite apple?
Fuji.
I love Honeycrisp. You guys are going to have to forgive me. I don't know what I sound like today. But I did find a law here in Indiana, because that's where we're at today. We have a very local case.
Okay.
Did you know that a person must get a referral from a licensed physician if he or she wishes to see a hypnotist, unless the desired procedure is to quit smoking or lose weight?
Why else would you want to go see a hypnotist?
I don't know, but if there's something I want to unlock inside of my brain, I feel like that's my information.
Yeah.
And there are some skeptics, but it is considered real enough for the government to pass legislation about how you can or cannot see someone. So maybe the feds don't want us to get possessed. Or get superpowers.
That's probably it. They want to keep us quiet.
About all the things we know.
Or that we, at least in my case, that I think I know.
Yeah. Well, I got to thinking, I'm like, well, why else would I want to see a hypnotist? And I've always wanted to. There could be things in my head that I don't remember because I was so young that they might be able to bring out. And I don't even know what it is, right? But I've just never gone because I'm sure they're expensive. I don't even know if there are any in Fort Wayne.
If I don't remember now, why bother? I don't think I would want to know what's in my brain all the way in the back.
Well, let me tell you what they would say. They would be like, well, when you were 4, you were a little shit.
Yeah.
And that is why your 4-year-old is being a little shit.
But I already know that. That's not locked away.
I don't remember things from when I was 4. I'm sure I was an angel.
Yes.
And I deserve none of this. Katie Collman was a 10-year-old girl who went missing in 2005, who was later found dead in Lake Cyprus. After months of searching, the police convicted a rather unusual suspect, and years later, behind prison walls, would be reminded of what he did in an act of revenge. So we are going to Crothersville, Indiana. It's about 75 miles south of Indy. Crothersville is a town of about 1,500 people, which is roughly the size of Roanoke. Oh. Roanoke has about 1,700 people, so this is almost the exact same type of town. Old style, like 1950s vibes. Town of Roanoke, if you've never been, it's so small.
It's so cute, though.
One main drag with all these little shops, and a lot of them are local. It's the kind of place where everybody knows everybody. And that was the case for Katie Collman. Katie was a brunette, adorable 10-year-old girl. Just like most kids in a small town, you let them go here or there. And it was on January 25th of 2005 when Katie's mom had sent her to the dollar store to pick up a few things and to come back home. She had been missing since around 3:30, and around 8 o'clock, that was when her parents reported that she was missing. The entire town started looking for her and began piecing together her movements. After Katie left the store, she was spotted by the railroad tracks and around 4 o'clock walking toward her home that was only just a few hundred yards away. She was carrying that yellow Dollar General bag, just kind of walking along those tracks.
Now, what time of year was this?
It was in January, so it was cold. But kids, they don't care. They're like, go get me some milk. Okay, Mom.
Yeah.
And off they go.
Well, and they feel so big. Like, you give me this responsibility. They just take off with it.
They do, and it wasn't unlike her to stop at a friend's house, but Katie knew that when it was dark, she needed to be home. When she wasn't there, fear really set in. Katie had no major problems at home, nothing she was running away from. She was just nowhere. She had vanished.
Oh, so terrible. And it gets dark so early, too.
A customer at the same store as Katie reported that the girl might have been distracted by an injured dog that was rumored to be on the tracks, hit by a train. Oh. They feared that she might have spotted that and then went to go look for the owners out of the goodness of her own heart just to tell them. And investigators speculated that she may have gone to an apartment building that was nearby to try to find the owners. That would give her a reason to veer off the trail. Mm-hmm. But with no leads, and after 18 exhausting hours of searching, with no witnesses and no sign of Katie, they began thinking that someone had taken her outside of Crothersville, maybe like a drifter off the interstate. After 24 hours with no leads, local and state police needed help. And I thought this was interesting because Crothersville is only 40 miles from the Kentucky border. Mm-hmm. The possibility that she could have been abducted across state lines put them in a position where they could have the FBI get involved. It's so sad because in these cases, a lot of the times it's the parents. They interviewed them and really focused on Katie's home life a lot. Oh. They interviewed the parents several times. 2 days after her disappearance, they finally got a solid lead. It was a witness that called in and said that they saw her driving as a passenger in a truck between 4:30 and 5 with a man that had a long face driving. It was stated that Katie didn't seem to be in distress at the time, so the person who saw her didn't think much of it, but noticed it because he drove past and then he had to kind of turn back and around. He pulled in on a dead end, so she saw them twice. She was sure it was Katie, and she even got a description of the vehicle. It was a white Ford F-150, but unfortunately, that was the most popular truck at the time. And that was the most popular color at the time.
Of course.
But they went ahead and they went straight to the BMV and they pulled records for every single white Ford F-150 truck owner. And then what they did was they cross-referenced those owners to any known sex offenders. And every one of those individuals interviewed had to provide them with some sort of alibi. Investigators released a composite sketch of the man, which Katie's dad right away said looked very similar to one of their neighbors. It really creeped him out. So the day after, the neighbor was overheard saying to someone he didn't know where Katie was. For all he knew, she was under the stairs of his trailer where he kept his other girlfriends. And this man was gross. The way he kept his house was in disarray. It was trash. They were fearful that Katie was kidnapped and hopefully still alive and maybe under those stairs, or maybe he was holding her. They interviewed him and the house had a very bad stench to it. You would walk in his bedroom and there were these huge glass jars all around his bed with his urine in them.
Ew.
Because he wouldn't get up to go pee. He just kept his urine all around him.
That's disgusting.
He also consented that they could search his house. He allowed that without the warrant, so they were able to do that right away. He lived alone with no girlfriend, but they found a lot of used feminine hygiene products around his house in various locations, even in drawers or whatever. I don't know if he took them from women's restrooms.
But you said used.
Yes, I did. Like out of the trash.
I feel so dirty.
Now, they searched his vehicle, which was not a Ford F-150, and found binoculars, duct tape, and restraining material. They confiscated his computer, but a search of his hard drive revealed nothing. And they just could not find the white pickup truck. Out of desperation, on day 3, they asked for the public's help. An officer with a hunch on day 5 headed to Cypress Lake, which was about 14 miles north. He is just very familiar with the area because there's a lot of activity that goes on there that isn't good.
Well, I love it when a person has a hunch.
I don't, because then I think they're the guilty one. I mean, I like that he had the hunch, but then instantly also, usually the person that finds the body.
I mean, just think of all my hikers in Germany that come across all these dead bodies. It's always a hiker.
Well, this one was a little different. He just light bulb and drives 15 miles to a specific lake. I mean, there's no clue anywhere. They're going off of nothing right now. And he just has this hunch to drive to this lake. And almost immediately, he sees something floating in the freezing, ice-cold water, a blue jacket, and then he sees the hands tied behind her back. And it made national news. As soon as Katie was removed, there were no obvious signs of her death. Police looked for any evidence around the lake, and I mean, they combed it so good. There were hundreds of pieces of anything at all they could find.
Well, and you just said it's a lake where there's a lot going on, so I'm sure they probably found quite a few things.
The investigating team felt that it was someone local because of how remote that lake is. Now, her hands had been tied with a slip knot. That means the harder she tried to get away, the tighter the knot got.
Yeah.
One day later, her autopsy revealed that her lungs were full of water, and that means she died by drowning. There was no trauma on her body. There was no evidence of a sexual attack that they saw. But the knot did remind them of a trapper because that's what they use. Another suspect was developed from this idea who had been seen in the area, who was a trapper that was a registered sex offender. So they interviewed him. He said he was at work, and the work verified that, and his alibi checked out. So he was cleared, and they moved on. 3 days after her body was found, the investigation explodes with a confession. Out of nowhere, 20-year-old Chucky Hickman, a known meth addict and local resident, tells investigators that he killed Katie. And he knew all the facts. The reason he killed her was because she may have blown his cover. He was at the apartment building making meth when Katie passed and saw what they were doing on her way home.
Like a 10-year-old would know what they were doing.
According to him, after Katie left the store, she stopped to visit a friend along the way. She noticed them making the meth, and they freaked out and got scared, him and a friend. They took her to a lake to scare her, and they tied her hands behind her back, walked her up to the edge of the water, and then she accidentally slipped and fell in.
Oh, please. Accidentally.
Oh, you cut out. Did you go again? We are recording.
Police canine, get on the ground! My call sign is Tango Kilo 123.
The crime scenes I search are in the dark depths of the ocean.
I was the lead investigator when two masked men thought they could get away with one of the most dangerous heists in West Australian history.
We knew they couldn't hold on very long. It's a hard story to tell, but I'll give it a go.
Persons of Interest is a new podcast that gives you access to police operational information you've never heard before. Listen out for Persons of Interest, the new WA Police podcast.
The ice of the lake preserved some biological evidence.
Oh.
The crime lab completed its DNA analysis of the samples taken from Katie's body. She had been raped.
Oh.
Now, there had been no outward signs of physical assault, no bruising, no tearing, and not even a defensive wound.
Oh, that's horrible.
They go back to Chucky Hickman, who had just confessed, and they re-interview him with this new knowledge. He did admit to knowing that others had assaulted her. They took a DNA sample from Chucky, which took another 3 days to analyze. And when the results came back, it was a huge shock to everyone that his DNA was not a match.
Oh, no. So he didn't lie about that.
He didn't lie about that, but he knew things that other people didn't know, things that weren't released.
I'm not saying he's innocent, but he didn't lie about that. But who are the others?
So investigators started interviewing everyone connected to Chucky and taking DNA samples. And over 70 individuals were tested. Took from everyone that was at the dollar store, everyone at that apartment building. They even swabbed her father. He just knew why they were doing it. They said it was for paternity, but he knew. No one matched. There was at least one other person that they knew they had to find. Could have been more, right? We don't know, but we know whoever assaulted her is still out there. After months of dead ends, a clue surfaces from Cypress Lake. A cigarette butt that had been found matched the DNA of the semen found on Katie. So they went through all the evidence, the hundreds of pieces of evidence they found, and linked it to the semen.
Wow.
One item out of hundreds.
That's amazing. Incredible.
Whoever assaulted her was also at the lake because they knew that. The cigarette butt placed this individual at the lake. They also discovered that the cigarette was an unusual brand. The actual brand was on the filter. They were still able to read it. And it was a Rogers 100 brand cigarette, which was unique to the area. And come to find out, only 4 stores sold them in that town. They were asked to call police if anybody comes in and buys them. Barely a week later, they got a phone call. Someone driving a white pickup bought a carton. They ran the plates on this truck and found out that it belonged to an Anthony Stockelman of Seymour, Indiana. Nothing about this man stood out at all. He was a 40-year-old married man with children living 15 miles north in Crothersville. Investigators had already met him 3 months earlier. Just after Katie had vanished, someone reported him as having a white truck in the area. And when they interviewed him, he said that he did see Katie, but he didn't know what happened to her. He even took a polygraph at the time, but kept falling asleep because he had worked the graveyard shift the night before, so it was rescheduled.
Dude, I'm at the police station getting ready to do a polygraph, a lie detector test. My adrenaline would be through the roof. There's no way I'm going to be falling asleep.
Well, no. And so my question is, can you fake going to sleep during a polygraph? Can't they tell you, like, oh, you are not sleeping?
I can tell your heartbeat is going fast. I don't know.
Yeah, he kept falling asleep, and so they just stopped doing it. Investigators head over to Anthony Stockelman's, and as they're walking up to the house, there were hundreds of cigarette butts. And he seemed surprised to see them. He denied any involvement and said that he had not been to Cypress Lake in 9 to 10 years because they kept asking him, how long has it been since you've been to this lake? Have you been to this lake? Because if he said, yes, I went hunting there or fishing there, then his cigarette could have been there. He just kept saying, no, I have not been there. But he did have an alibi. According to his wife, between 5 and 5:30 that evening, which was within the time frame that they thought Katie had died. She said he was home. Investigators took a DNA sample from him, and it was a match to both the cigarette butt and the semen retrieved from Katie's body. Now, this is a little strange because then we have Chucky Hickman, who had already been under arrest for 2 months for her murder. Were they in on it together, or was Chucky lying? So they did a full investigation of Chucky's timeline of that day because he was with people all day long. And what they concluded was that he wouldn't have had time to drive to the lake. No one would come up with a reason why he had confessed. They knew Anthony sexually assaulted her, but did he kill her? They went through his truck and they scoured it, looking for any DNA evidence that maybe there was a third person in the truck. And there wasn't. It was just him and Katie. They processed the rope that tied her hands for skin cells, and they could not believe it. There was actually skin cells still on it because it had been in the water for 5 days. 3 days later, the DNA came back as Anthony Stockelman's. Now they had proof that he also murdered her. He was a family man with no history whatsoever, a person you would never suspect. He never showed remorse or emotion, and he really did not say he ever did it and never went into any sort of detail about what had happened. But investigators pieced together what they believe, which was on the day she disappeared, Anthony was helping his mother move, and where the house was, there's a clear view of where Katie had been walking. Investigators believe he saw her walking toward the store and that he waited for her to walk back. They believe he lured her inside of the house, although he has never admitted this, and he molested her there because investigators found red fibers on Katie's body that matched the rug in his mother's bedroom.
Oh, God.
After he assaulted her, he put her in his truck around 4:30, and it is thought that her hands weren't tied yet because the witness that saw her in the truck said that she didn't look distressed, remember, but that's because she was most likely in shock. And when they got to the lake, he tied her up and threw her in the freezing water. They think he smoked his cigarette while he watched her fight for her life with her hands tied behind her back, struggling for her last breath. He drove home and had dinner with his family. Oh, gosh. This case was so hard on this community, and nobody could believe it. To avoid the death penalty, he took a plea deal for a life sentence. However, he still denies any involvement in her death whatsoever, and the other guy got off.
So we don't know the connection.
We don't know what really happened. Okay. Anthony just says, I didn't do it. And sometimes DNA is wrong. But they're saying that this DNA, I mean, it's a match. But why does this other guy know all these details?
Right.
Was he in the house too? Did he lure her inside? What happened? Do we really have the right guy here? For a long time, Anthony's wife stood by him and believed him, but ended up turning against him in court and testified against him. About a year later, Anthony is in prison with his life sentence for the rape, conviction, and murder of Katie Collman when he has a run-in with Katie's cousin, Jared Harris. He was in prison accused of battery. So Jared slips into Anthony's cell while he's not in there, waits for him to come in. When he comes in, Jared slams the cell door shut and it locks. And he says, one of two things are going to happen right now. I'm either going to kill you or I'm going to tattoo your head. What would you like? And he said, I'll take the tattoo. Jared held him down while he tattooed Katie's revenge across his forehead.
I am looking at a picture and I can't even describe it, but it does in big capital letters all across his forehead.
He even took the time to be grammatically correct, which I can appreciate. He even put the apostrophe for Katie's, showing ownership. What else happened in that cell? I don't know. What other revenge he was going to get. I hope it was worth it because Jared got another 7 years for that incident. It's rumored that since he's had the tattoo removed, I don't know that that's true. That was really something. What happened was 2 police officers actually got fired when this photo leaked.
I mean, I can see. I've never heard of that before. I've never seen that picture before either. But here's also the thing, though. If his DNA was just on the cigarette butt, I would say, well, he had a whole bunch of buds outside his place, right? Somebody could have taken it, maybe to plant evidence or whatever. But it was on the robe, the semen. I mean, it's kind of hard to deny. The red fiber from the carpet that matched.
He has the Ford F-150. He was in the area at the time. All of it lines up. It's just the most unusual, unlikely suspect. It's no one they would have looked for.
Well, and then here's Chucky. I did it. And he knew details. And like you said, he was probably there.
His whole story does not make sense.
No.
Maybe they were making meth at his mom's house because they said his mom's house was empty. I cannot believe I have never heard about this case.
Me neither.
It just really pulled at my heartstrings. And my Aunt Jana, our Aunt Jana, works in the prisons. And I can't imagine. Tattoos are a big deal in there.
Sure.
They never even saw he had a tattoo until the morning.
Well, I mean, he also didn't have a whole lot of hair to cover it up either.
No, there was no hiding it.
He got 7 more years for it. And he's like, fuck it. I'll do it again.
Probably should have had a rapist and child murderer in solitary.
I'm sure word gets out so fast. And it's a lot of times the people you least suspect.
What are the odds that he would be near Katie's family?
Right. But I mean, also, he had a family, but look at Dennis Rader, BTK.
Yeah.
Was married, had a family, and he is the worst scumbag of the worst.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how many times has he done this, gotten away with it?
How many times have we come across one?
In our lives?
Yeah. Walk by that we don't know. Oh my gosh.
Ew.
That's why I don't leave my house. Nothing is safe anymore.
Yeah.
And nowhere. It doesn't matter where you live. Big cities, small towns. Shit happens everywhere, unfortunately. Just be vigilant. Just be aware.
Yeah.
And make your kids aware. I mean, don't get them scared, but make them be more aware of their surroundings. Because you know how kids are.
Yeah, it's scary stuff.
Thank you for listening.
Stay sassy.
Stay judgy.
And stay tuned in with the Judgy Crime Girls. We love you. Okay, bye.
Bye. Wait. Now I'm confused.
What the hell did you do to this? You broke my...
I did.
You broke my position.
I hate to break your position. Don't want to do that.
It goes under. Oh my God, I haven't done this in forever. I have to be careful of the papers. Oh, that's funny.
Bringing back old school.
I am. I forgot. Like, I used to do this all the time. It's so funny.
How far we've come.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're big girls now.
Oh, I love that about us. So grown up.